The following program is presented by Ride the Wave Media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for all our videos at Ride the Wave Media Podcast. Enjoy the program.
We are those guys. We hope to be your guys as we continue to chart the NFL season. It is getting cold out there, Nick, where you are, not me, here in Southern California. But week 15 of the NFL season kicked off on Thursday. Usually we come at you with a Thursday special, but Nick Ferguson, former 10-year NFL safety, we made the executive decision, no touchdowns, no immediate reaction pod. What's going on, Nick?
Hey man, what's going on with you, man? Yes, it is cold here in Denver, Colorado. What's the temperature there in sunny California?
Well, I think today was a high of about 60. Although I promise you, it got down to about 40 overnight last night.
Ooh, that's cold for you guys.
Hey, listen, with the two kids, I'll pay whatever it costs to heat the rest of the house. It's a good thing we've got a tiny little estate here in Orange County. Nick, I mentioned no touchdowns and a 12-6 victory, Rams over 49ers. And of all the things to bring up, Nick, I want to criticize, again, we'll criticize Devondre Campbell, your experience in the National Football League and what he did quitting on his football team. That's the low-hanging fruit. But I wanted to criticize the Rams because the game situation is they're up 9-6, driving following a Brock Purdy interception, incredible play in the end zone that gets snatched up by Demarius Williams. Shout out me, who wasn't really watching the game while I was working, or I was distracted. I forgot who had possession. I saw Williams with the ball and the touchdown. I go, Kyron Williams for my fantasy team. Wait a minute. Not quite.
Not at all.
So Rams drive the length of the field, 70 yards, get stopped, and they kick a field goal to go up 12-6. Now, I wanted to criticize them, not just because how the Detroit Lions decided to go for it, went up 3 to ice the Green Bay Packers. Oh my God, I already forget. Yes, the Green Bay Packers a week ago Thursday. But now the 49ers get the ball back with an opportunity to score a game-winning touchdown. Again, only 20 seconds left on the clock, but still you're giving them hope of a touchdown. I get if they don't convert, they just need a field goal. But take me inside, Nick, maybe the mindset for offensive coordinators, play callers, quarterbacks, knowing they have to do a 2-minute or 1-minute drill when they know they need 7, as opposed to they can just settle for a field goal. Because I got 2 examples earlier in the season where going up 6 bit that team in the butt and ended up with a loss.
Well, everyone can't be Dan Campbell because, Dan Campbell goes forward on 4th down all the time, and it's kind of like a 60-40 for him. So if you're Sean McVay, here's what you're thinking if you're Sean McVay. You're saying, okay, well, our offense is struggling, but we're still moving the ball down the field. But, guess what? Oh, by the way, San Francisco, they're not doing dilly squat either, right? Yeah. There's no McCaffrey. There's no Trent Williams. They are struggling. So kicking the field goal, you got to take the points. You still put the pressure on the 49ers because they just can't say, well, we're going to play, game control offense. No, now you got to press the envelope. Now you got to drive the ball down the field. And when you look at how the Rams defense was playing all game, now they're playing into your hands. So you're forcing Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, that group to really attempt throws down the field. And just like you pointed out, Brock Purdy threw an interception in the end zone. The likelihood of Purdy pressing again and doing the same thing, those chances were 110%. So while I know some people don't agree with the fact of kicking field goals because it leaves the opportunity for the opposite team to move the ball down the field. But like you said, there's very little time on the clock. So we're going to put them under all the pressure, right? Because first of all, you're battling through injuries. Your quarterback is struggling. The offense has been struggling all day. It's been a defensive game. You're at home. You're in inclement weather. And oh, by the way, if you lose this game, you're out of the playoffs. So all that pressure was on Kyle Shanahan and the offense. So I agree with what Sean McVay decided to do, kick the field goal, put the pressure on them. But I think you may not agree with that.
No, all situations aren't the same. I kind of you've changed my mind because I'm thinking of Greg Olson, who criticized the Arizona Cardinals a month ago for doing the same thing, right? They go up 22-16 with about 3 minutes left in the game. Vikings go 8 plays, 70 yards, in about 2 minutes to win that game. And then week 2, it happens to the Eagles where they go up 6, and then the Falcons go the length of the field in 1 minute and 5 seconds to take the lead. But again, less time. You understand it's how the 49ers had been playing and the conditions they were dealing with. There wasn't as much rain in the second half, but still you're dealing with a wet, slick ball and a gross, muddy field. And like you said, a lot of 49ers backups, their third, fourth string running backs. Obviously, no Brandon Ayuk. Jawan Jennings has been sensational at times, but really lacking the weapons other than a Deebo Samuel who, like all great things in the rain, just looks washed right now.
Oh, wow. I mean, I know it's been really interesting because Deebo Samuel was complaining that he was not getting enough touches, as most wide receivers are and often do. But for him not to make that, can I say, a routine catch like that you expect for him to make, that was kind of disappointing because even Kyle Shanahan said, had Deebo hauled in that reception, that was possibly a house call, but this is where the 49ers are. And, no pun intended, when it rains, it literally pours.
Well, other than that, we can all point to the incredible shock of Cooper Kupp being held without a catch just the third time in his career and the first time against the 49ers. But it's not just me sweating my fantasy football matchup with him in it. I swear, it's not just me. It's just about everybody who in this week 15, usually playoff time, you have to go back to 5 years ago, the last time that Cooper Kupp was held without a catch. So we're stressing a little bit. Who's not stressed right now, though? Devondre Campbell. Devondre Campbell, man. He's just going to pick up his helmet and his pads and go home in the middle of the third quarter. Reporters had asked Shanahan, how come they didn't see Campbell, who had gotten some playing time with Dre Greenlaw out, who returned for this game. So did Nick Bosa, his little bro. The teeth of this defense was getting healthy, but Campbell left this game in the middle of the third quarter, according to Kyle Shanahan. And at this point, Nick, you criticize Anthony Richardson for skipping one play, but almost the entire second half. Like, I think the 49ers were pretty unified in their response to this postgame, but do you want to pile on considering a lot of that defensive coaching staff under Kyle Shanahan based on your time in San Francisco? Like, this is game over for Campbell and the 49ers, right?
Yeah, of course, man. This is one of those situations where there's no way that you can go back and resolve this situation. It's almost like cheating on your girlfriend, right? You get caught red-handed. I mean, you can say, I'm sorry, and make all these excuses as why you cheated, but he caught you. So there's no going back. And there's no going back for Campbell and the 49ers right now. Knowing Kyle the way that I know him, I'm sure he was pissed on the field when it was brought to his attention, but he was trying to focus on the game and knowing as though sometimes he internalized things. I'm sure that was going around in his head. I'm trying to keep our playoff hopes alive. I have players who are tapping out. And let's be totally honest. Campbell's real issue was that Greenlaw was out. He was the guy who was getting those starting reps. Greenlaw comes back. He is set down. Greenlaw is pulled out of the game because his Achilles, who he injured, what he injured against the Chiefs earlier this year in the Super Bowl in Vegas, it started to get tight. So they said, Campbell, come on over here. You're back in. And Campbell said, nah, bro. No. See, you wanted to put him in the game, right? And he was supposed to be the man, right? But no. See, I'm the man. I am the man, and you guys somehow forgot that. So he was like, you know what? I'm gonna do you guys one solid. Dudes, peace. I'm out of here. We're not going to the playoffs anyway. So what he essentially did, he alienated the locker room. And if I'm any other team around the league unless you are in a desperate mode, because desperate times make people do stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to have Campbell on my team. Now, I'm all for everyone working, but in this case, knowing how hard it is to get into the league and how hard it is to stay, you said you were not going back in the game? Are you kidding me? It's like my kid telling me he's not going to clean his room and he's putting his foot down. Oh, really? That's what you really want to do? Yes. So I'm sure that 49ers locker room looked at Campbell like, oh, really? And when they do that, you're gone.
Leave it to George Kittle with the quote after the game. I've never been around anybody that's ever done that, and I hope I'm never around anyone that does that again. So that tells you all you need to know. That locker room essentially unified around getting him out of there. It's still, a lot left to be desired, a lot of meat left on that bone in terms of how the 49ers performed. But Nick, just to put a bow on a miserable Thursday night game that we somehow spent over 10 minutes discussing, the 49ers season was lost in the offseason. The distractions around Christian McCaffrey's injury, the contract negotiations for Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams, this team was far from focused when they were just a few plays away from winning the Super Bowl. So for as consistent and competitive this team has been in years past, they come up well short this season because of all the distractions that came in before a single snap was even played. That, and for whatever reason, they get bit again by the injury bug.
Yeah, you know what? It seems like that window that we always talk about in sports, it started to get really small.
I think it's closed. I think the window's closed, Nick. They got one more. They got one more year of Brock Purdy on his rookie deal. He's gonna hold out if they don't get a deal done. Beyond that, Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk are probably not going to be ready for week 1 next year. So I think next year is a wash as well, or at the very least, they're far from the 100% fully healthy team that was in the Super Bowl a year ago. So how does this team look and restructure themselves when Brock Purdy is set to make $45, $50, $55 million a year? I don't know. 2 years from now, maybe after a franchise tag, he makes as much as Dak Prescott at $60 million. I think it's just going to be impossible for that team to recover. So I don't expect them to be 10, 11 wins next year.
Here's what I never really figured out. I mean, Brock Purdy is played in the Super Bowl. And I don't know what kind of agreement that he's made with John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, or the York family. But normally guys go, you know what? I'm not returning to the team until I get a new deal. Mm-hmm. And you have to wonder, I mean, with the window closing on the 49ers, what is that deal really going to look like for Brock Purdy? Because you have Ayuk and CMC, like you mentioned. Those guys were just paid and they are coming off injuries. And then you have Kittle, Bosa, right? And Deebo Samuel. That's a significant amount of money when it comes to looking at the 49ers payroll. And once rent comes due, which it is about to, with Brock Purdy, you're not going to be able to keep everyone. And oh, by the way, I forgot about Trent Williams and his deal, right? So that's a lot of money for a team that seemed to be trending in an opposite direction.
Well, they're old too, right? Trent Williams will be 37 next year, talking about contract extensions. Kittle will be 32. Deebo's, let's say he's gone at this point, right? 29 with diminishing skill set, at least what I've seen so far this season. So remains to be seen. I'm just a little down on them because the best version was still coming up short in the Super Bowl a couple of times, but credit to Shanahan for getting them there in the first place. Week 15, Nick, we've got obviously the best matchup, I think, in a whole week compared to what we just saw with the Bills and the Rams. You turn around, you get the Bills and the Lions, which is going to be excellent viewing pleasure for ourselves. But Nick, we're a couple weeks out from Christmas and Hanukkah and the holidays, so I thought I'd go through a couple of games and add them to my wish list for you. Nick Ferguson, the Miami Dolphins are visiting the Houston Texans, and on my wish list for this game, I want to see the chunk plays. I understand that the quick offense that both the Dolphins and the Texans execute kind of mitigated the success or ceiling of a Tank Dell for Houston side, both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the Dolphins side. But can we please get some chunk plays from both of these teams? That's what I would put on my wish list in this matchup.
So basically, you say on the first day of Christmas, I want a bevy of chunk plays. I don't know if you're going to get a bevy of chunk plays. I don't know if that's going to happen because DeMeco Ryan spent a lot of time in San Francisco with offensive coordinator and head coach Mike McDaniels. And oh, by the way, Bobby Slowick spent some time in the San Francisco 49ers offensive side of the ball. So basically,
again.
You're staring in the mirror. It's like two twins fighting one another, right? With the same hand. So
let me pause you right there because the Bobby Slowick, and it's all personnel, right? It's predicated on who they have up front and who they have at the skill position. Bobby Slowick, to his own detriment, right? Like the Texans lead the NFL with like third and long situations, just in terms of the amount of yardage that they have on third down, because they are committed to running the football with Joe Mixon on first and second down. Meanwhile, due to a lack of personnel or success in the run game, the Dolphins use quick screens and bubble routes as their running game. So it's looking in the mirror, but tell me how those two offenses resemble one another, even though one is predicated on running the football and the other is one of the worst running teams in the National Football League.
Well, let's start with Bobby Slowick and the Houston Texans. That's the staple of the Mike Shanahan offense. You run to set up the offense because now if you're successful on the ground, it opens up play action. And your second level players that you're playing against, those linebackers are creeping close to the line of scrimmage. So that means it creates space down the field. And oh, by the way, unlike the first year, his rookie year, C.J. Stroud is not looking the same. And right now, what Bobby Slowick said, you know what? We're going to lean into it by handing the ball a little off to Joe Mixon. And for me, I paid a lot of attention to it because having C.J. Stroud on my team for a lot of games, thinking that he's going to duplicate that last year performance, it's hurt me on the fantasy football side of it. But let's go look on the Miami Dolphins side because yet I digress. Well, when you look at the 49ers, Mike McDaniel, he wants to run the ball. Once again, it goes back to what's the staple of the system. When you can't run the ball, now you are manufacturing run plays with screen plays, right? Throwing it out to the right or left or middle screens. So if you're DeMeco Ryans, you've seen that. You just have to make sure that your guys are prepared. They are able to see what's in front of them, communicate, but more importantly, tackle in space. And I'll tell you this, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, two are the more explosive plays in the league and for the Miami Dolphins. Here's what I've learned. If either of those two guys are off the ball, then most likely it's a tonal screen. You just rally and you tackle. But if either of those guys are on the point, they're on the ball, then you better communicate and make sure you're on your P's and Q's in the back end. And because the Dolphins have not been able to muster the run game, guess what? That means you put more pressure on Tua to throw the ball down the field. And what we've seen is when he has that pressure and he's pressing, turnovers galore.
Terron Armstead, the quality left tackle, doubtful for this game after only playing 5 snaps a week ago. So time in the pocket is not going to be there for him, right? There's the reason he's the quickest release in the National Football League this season. We're going to put a pin in the Chiefs and Browns because, yes, I on my wish list would love to see Jameis throw 4 touchdowns, 3 picks again, and we have a 1-possession game against the Chiefs. I think it's just going to happen, right? The Chiefs are like, I forget, I'm not the biggest betting person. I know you weren't either, but it was, they've never covered, I think, in their 12 wins this year. Meanwhile, they still find to win those 1-possession games. So they can win it while Jameis gives it away. So I digress. Nick, what's on your wish list for this Colts-Broncos game with the 7 seed at stake here? And again, Texans win, Colts lose. They've got the AFC South wrapped up.
Well, my wish is really simple. A Broncos dub. right? Dub
Oh,
City.
come on.
But partying in the locker
How
room.
did they get there, Nick?
I mean, did you expect for me to say anything less? Look, I mean, the Broncos have been playing well up to this point. Last game against the Cleveland Browns on Monday night, the defense didn't look that great, but the offense finally found their sea legs, right? So if you continue with that momentum here at home, knowing everything that is at stake, and knowing on a short week, you got to play a Chargers team that you lost to in week 5 earlier this season.
Yeah.
So it's no holds barred for this Broncos team, and they got to go out and they have to play well. And it's kind of a simple recipe. Don't give up explosive plays similar to what you gave up against Cleveland. And more importantly, no penalties on either side. No drive extenders, no drive killers, and the Broncos should walk away with this game.
Let's spend the most time here on Bills-Lions. Lions hosting Buffalo, 12-1, 10-3. The Bills locked up the AFC East. I don't know, week 2, week 3. Do you remember exactly? Meanwhile, Detroit just a game up on the Minnesota Vikings. So I guess on my wish list for this game, Nick, is the Bills understanding that this is their best game left on the schedule. I don't want them to be pulling punches and saving it for the postseason. You know that with the Lions as the odds-on favorite to win the title, still, again, scratching and clawing in the NFC North, which has been the best division in football. I'm not worried about a Dan Campbell team being ready for this game. I would just like to see Buffalo go full throttle, whatever that means. I'm pretty sure that would be emphasizing the run game against this leaky Lions defensive front. Meanwhile, this defense, which has been lacking a pass rush, going up against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. I'd love to see the Bills get nasty in the trenches on both sides of the football. That's on my wish list for the Bills and the Lions. How do you see it, Nick?
Like sand through the hourglass, these are the days of our lives. And listen, and these are the days of Dan Campbell and the fans of the Detroit Lions live. They've been waiting for this for what, almost 20-something years to get to this point, and now they are here. So for me, once again, going back to why the Broncos need to beat the Colts to keep their playoff hopes alive, for me, it works great for the Broncos if Detroit is able to knock off the Buffalo Bills, because once again, that would mean back-to-back weeks the Bills have lost games. And that means that with the pressure on Josh Allen, right, to now become the man and usurp Jim Kelly as being the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills and establish his own legacy, 2 losses in a row, he's going to start to overthink things, right? This is a guy who just, I think, a week ago just got engaged. You want to put more on his mind, more on his – you want to make him think, because now he's thinking, well, you know what? I beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the regular season. I just lost 2 games back-to-back. You know, once against the Rams and one against the Detroit Lions. I get it. They're not in my conference, but I lost. I lost to 2 good quarterbacks. You want him to play with that level of pressure. And for me, being a Broncos fan and living here in Denver, it works well, because chances are the Broncos are probably going to have to go on a roll on Wild Card Weekend and play Josh Allen in Buffalo. So I like it. I'm rooting for the Lions. Roar, Lions, roar.
Shout out to your guy, Aaron Glenn. I think one of the names we mentioned most frequently when we started this podcast. The Lions defense, 13 players on IR, 31 other teams in the National Football League, no more than 7 defensive players on IR, just putting it together with scotch tape and Band-Aids and 4th stringers. They also had another depth linebacker who's ruled out against Buffalo. So they are without 15 of their defensive players on this roster. So shout out your guy, Aaron Glenn. Nick Ferguson, we got cute. We talked about what was on our wish list. So, Nick, we always do, Nick, before we split, before we get on out of here. And, Nick, before we split, how's the Christmas shopping going, buddy? Like, everything all taken care of? The missus, the kids, the coworkers? I mean, your on-air partners, maybe on the podcast format? Like, should I be expecting something in my stocking? Like, how are we living, Nick?
Well, it's going to be a long distance for me to put anything in your stocking as far as stocking stuffers. But as far as the guys here in Denver, they can handle their own and they can manage. As far as everything else, we got to be a little quiet around here. We can't tell everything, right? So yeah, do I need to get on the boogie as far as that is concerned? Absolutely. But here's something interesting. Like my wife and I, we do Christmas, but we put a budget on how much we can spend. And it's not an enormous amount. But every time we put a limit on the budget, sometimes my wife goes over that budget, right? She goes over,
as
right?
they do.
And I understand the reason she goes over because she is thinking about me and wanting to put me first. So I love her for that. But with that being said, I got some thinking as far as where am I going to get her? See, that's where the heavy lifting comes.
Well, they don't call you St. Nicholas for nothing. I mean, if you can't do it, nobody can. You go to all those houses, every single, billions of homes on December 24th, making sure that everyone, including Mrs. Ferguson, is all taken care of. He's Nick Ferguson, former 10-year NFL safety, who I believe has a side gig 2 weeks from now on Christmas Eve. Just a thought, St. Nicholas. I'm Alex Hardy. We are those guys. We hope to be your guys. Week 15 of the NFL season, we highlighted some of our favorite matchups. And look, like we're coming down the stretch. We're potentially going to have more than half of the playoff teams slotted in. So we're going to have a lot to look forward to. So make sure you don't miss a single episode with us. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, Ride the Wave Media. Nick Ferguson, let's get on out of here. What do you have for the people?
Make sure you don't receive any cold in your stocking.
That's up to you, though. You're the guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's called naughty and nice list. So obviously, if you're naughty, you get cold.
Are you saying it? Yes. Do I have to be nicer to you now? Is that what's happening here?
Man, I don't know, but this is that time of year that you might need to.